Sister Pat for her absolutely wonderful children's story this morning. Uh, for it is true that the opportunity of education is not given to everyone, and I guess in a way I'm speaking to everyone, but in particular to our children and to our young people at this point in time. Just to say that while we have the opportunity for education, while life circumstances don't deny us those opportunities, let us take advantage of every opportunity that we have to further our education and, in particular, to further our spiritual growth and maturity in Jesus. I'm going to introduce to you now the meditational hymn, meditational song, which is A Few Good Men. A Few Good Men. Thank you.
Times in my childhood we traveled so
David, and I am one of those individuals who lived through the time from the passing of the Sunday law to the time that Jesus came. I'm one of those people who lived through the time from the passing of the Sunday law to the time that Jesus came. And represented one of those represented by the 144,000. And I'd like to tell you what happened to me, my particular story, my particular testimony of how I became a Christian and what happened during the time between the passing of the Sunday law and the second coming of Jesus. Well, to be fair, as you can probably guess, I didn't start off life as a Christian. Very far from it. My parents didn't go to church, and in fact, most of the people that I knew didn't go to church. So I simply grew up, and I went to university. I became an accountant and worked for a very good company here in Reading, and I one day, just by chance, I was out shopping in Asda and I turned the corner in the aisle and I literally bumped into a young woman whose name was Debbie. And just as we bumped into each other, we smiled at each other, we said hello to each other, and for whatever reason, we started to talk and to chat with each other. And to be fair, as I started to chat with Debbie, I realized what a wonderful person she was. And to be fair, in my mid and early, my middle 20s, I, I could feel my heart fluttering inside as I chatted with her. And so I kind of took my courage in my hand and I asked if she would go to the pub with me for a drink. But well, she was kind of curiously her answer, and I really never thought about it at the time. But she said to me she would like to go out with me, but not to the pub. She would prefer to go for a walk in the park and perhaps to feed the ducks. So I said, well, to be fair, that's fine by me because my objective was to get to know her a little bit better. So we went even that same afternoon in the park, and we went walking together around the park, and that's when she explained to me that she was a Christian, she was a Methodist, and she told me all about her Christian principles, her belief in Jesus, her friendship with Jesus. And in all fairness, everything she said, I was in perfect agreement with, that people should love one another and treat each other with respect and dignity. So I didn't have any problems with what she was telling me about Christianity. And then she invited me to come to church. And, in all fairness, I have to be honest and say that I really only went to church because she asked me to go to church for me to spend a little bit more time with her. But in all fairness, when I did go to the Methodist church, I found a group of Christians there to be very nice, very pleasant group of people, very caring and very loving of each other. And I found the environment to be very happy and very friendly place. But not only that, but I also found that the messages, the sermons that I was listening to were also very good. They taught me how to love and respect other people and to love and respect the God of heaven. So I went out with Debbie and I went to church for, well, it must have been at least a year, maybe even a year and a half. And then one day, the pastor of the church came to me and said, listen, David, we noticed that you've been coming to church quite regularly and just wanted to ask what your plans are for the future in regard to your faith. And I never really thought about it. I never really stopped to think about it. But I started to consider, and I realized that in the year and a half that I had been going to church, that I had started to believe that there is a God in heaven and to pray and to talk to him about the issues going on in my life. And all of a sudden, without even realizing it, I realized that I was now a Christian. And so I said to the pastor, yes, I would like to be baptized and become a member of this church. And that's exactly what happened. I got baptized, and my relationship with Debbie continued. And about a year after that, we got married, and we were living together quite happily and quite harmoniously. And then I realized that around that time, in the news, on the television, on the radio, on the internet, all kinds of different types of media, we started to listen, Debbie and I, to the news that Sunday had become more of a prominent public issue. For whatever reason, the Christian churches, both in Europe and in America, and to be fair, in other parts of the world, they started to become concerned about the decline in people becoming Christians. Some people were just choosing not to have put their faith in any type of God and just believe in no God or an evolutionary process or whatever it may be. And some people even left Christianity and started to believe in other world religions that were moving into Europe and into America. But for whatever reason, the Sunday churches started to talk together. And in spite of the fact that there was over 30,000 different Christian organizations and different Christian denominations, the one thing that all of these different denominations, Catholics and Protestants, whoever they may be, the one thing that they all had in common was worship on Sunday, except for one little group. Right in the middle of that debate, right in the middle of that discussion, I heard about a little group called the Seventh-day Adventists. And for whatever reason, this particular group was saying that Sunday was not the Bible Sabbath. Now, I remember talking to Debbie at the time. We were just driving from one place to another. I can't even remember where to where. But we were just talking about that. And we decided that when we would get home, we would find out more about it. So sure enough, when we got home, we both went onto the internet. We Googled Seventh-day Adventist Church. And sure enough, we found that there was a Seventh-day Adventist church just not too far, just a couple of miles down the road from where we were. And so we rang the pastor, we texted the pastor, and we asked if we could have a chat with him about the Bible Sabbath and about Seventh-day Adventists, who they were. And the pastor texted back, and we set up a Zoom meeting together. And that Monday evening, we came together on Zoom. And I asked the pastor, why do you say that Bible Sabbath is Saturday and not Sunday? And who are Seventh-day Adventists? And so the pastor was a very nice man. He's really a very, very nice man indeed. And he said to us, look, the Bible talks about the Sabbath. And it's at the end of creation week, it tells us that God rested on the Sabbath day. After God had made everything in heaven and earth, all the animals, all the plants, all the fish, and all the birds, after God had created everything, that he rested from his work. And that Sabbath was a time for us to both build our relationship with God and to build our relationship with one another, our friends and our families, our church members, whoever they may be, that build relationships. And then I smiled at him and said, well, and he said to me, I almost forgot, he said to us that Jesus himself kept the Sabbath. It was his custom to keep the Sabbath. And the Sabbath that Jesus kept was the Saturday, not the Sunday. Anyway, so we asked him, what's the Seventh-day Adventist Church all about? And again, he smiled at us, and there was a kind of little twinkle in his eyes as he was smiling at us, and he could see that we were genuinely wanting to learn. So he said to us, look, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is not just another Christian denomination. It's not just another Christian organization. No, God has called the Seventh-day Adventist Church to be the remnant church of Bible prophecy. And to be fair, I think at that point, he could see the look of puzzlement on my face, and he gave me a big smile and he said, look, he said, every member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church is called to share an end day message of hope to a dying world. And that message of hope, he said to us, is found in Revelation 14. It comes in three parts. There are three parts to the end day message of hope that every Seventh day Adventist is to share to a dying world. And the three parts are quite simple, he said. The first part is that we should worship God who created heaven and earth. The second part is that we should come out of this world of confusion that we find ourselves living in today. And the third part is that we should not be deceived by the devil. Just those three parts to the end day message of hope to a dying world. Well, that was the conversation that we had with the pastor of the local Seventh-day Adventist church. And I have to be honest with you, that night, Debbie and I, we prayed about things and we thought about things. And that was a Monday evening. And Tuesday, we prayed about it. And Wednesday, we prayed about it. Thursday and Friday, we prayed about it. And just as we came to Friday evening, just around sunset time, Debbie came to me and I was helping with the washing up in the kitchen, and Debbie came to me and said, "What do I think that we should do?" And I spoke to her and I said, "Look," I said, "you come from a Sunday church background. Your parents were Sunday keepers, and I just came into Christianity just a few years ago. But my perspective is that whatever the Bible tells us that we should do, whatever Jesus reveals to us through the Holy Spirit, we should do that thing and be faithful to God." And I looked at Julie and Debbie rather, and I could see that she was thinking about all the relationships that she had built in the Methodist Church and her upbringing and all of that. And I realized that this was a struggle for her, more of a struggle for her than it was for me. But finally, she said to me, "Dave, if that's what Jesus wants us to do, that's what we should do. We should be faithful to God in all things." And that's what we did. We contacted the pastor again. We asked for more Bible study. We became baptized members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And it was really a delight. I mean, the pastor we did some discipleship training, and we got the message that we are, as Seventh-day Adventists, every Seventh-day Adventist is to share this end day message of hope to the dying world. And that's exactly what we did. We went to our neighbors, we chatted over the garden fence, we shared our experiences with them, they shared their experiences with us. If they needed help to cut the grass or to help with this thing or with that thing, we would make ourselves available in the neighborhood. We just tried to be loving and lovable people. And very soon we found that our neighbors we were building friendships and relationships with our neighbors, and they were making inquiries about us, and we told them that we were Christians. We told them that we were Seventh-day Adventists, and they asked us to pray for various issues going on in their lives. And slowly we built up a good relationship with them. And I'm not saying every one of them, by no means, but one or two of them, a few of them, asked if they could learn more about the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And in time, it didn't happen overnight, but in the process of time, some of our neighbors chose to become Seventh-day Adventist Christians themselves. Well, it were a couple of 3-4 years went by, and I have to be honest then, what happened, it was very curious, and it all happened very, very quickly, Reading West. It all happened very, very quickly. All of a sudden, I mean, for the last few years, all of the churches were still talking about grouping together and agreeing on this one thing, that Sunday is a day that all Christians should worship on. And for whatever reasons, all of a sudden, just like that, The governments in Europe and the government in America, they all started to come together and agree that Sunday should be legalized as a day of rest. And so just like that, it happened. It passed through the European Parliament, it passed through the British Parliament, it passed through the American government, and it was this Sunday law was now enforced just exactly as the Bible said that it would be. And I have to be honest with you, Reading West, that things started to get very difficult from that point in time. Things started to get very, very difficult indeed. As the law was being enforced to keep Sunday, if you didn't keep Sunday, you couldn't go to Asda, not even to buy a bag of flour to bake bread at home. You couldn't access any of the services, the public health services. If you didn't keep Sunday, you were cut off from the rest of the community. And I'm telling you, the thing that life became very, very difficult. Both Debbie and I, we lost our jobs because we wouldn't keep Sunday. And you can imagine the difficulties that we started to experience during that time. But I have to also say, Reading West, that that wasn't the one that really troubled me personally, I should say. The one that really troubled me, the one that really got under my skin, is that we had all little WhatsApp groups within our church. And so we would hear that some of our church members, some Seventh-day Adventist church members from the church that I was going to, that they were giving up the faith, that they were leaving the Sabbath behind them and taking on the Sunday. And that really got under my skin. It really troubled me that people that I knew, people that I went to church with, people that I prayed with and sang hymns with, and people that I listened to sermons with, people that I had fellowship lunch with, people that I went door to door knocking with and distributed leaflets with, that individuals within the church were leaving the Sabbath behind them and and accepting the Sunday law. It really, really got to me. And I think Debbie could see how much it was bringing me down, more than all of the other difficulties that Sunday law had brought in with it. And Debbie came to me and she said, look, can you remember that sermon that the pastor preached on the 10 virgins? It's only when she said that that I realized that Jesus was speaking to this very time. That there would be a time when Christians would, on the outside, they would all look exactly the same. They would all behave in exactly the same way. Go to church together, pray together, sing together, and all the rest of it together. But during the process of time, during the process of the long waiting for Jesus, some would leave or neglect their relationship with Jesus. The wise, during that period of time, maintained their relationship with Jesus. They prayed, they worshiped, they witnessed, and they built relationships with both church members and neighborhood and community friends and families. And by doing all of those things together, they were able to maintain their relationship with Jesus. And those were the wise. Those were the ones who remained strong. But the ones who neglected prayer, neglected coming together for worship, neglected witnessing, neglected building their relationship with church members and with other members of their family, friends, and neighbors, those were the ones who started to fall away. It was very difficult. I'm telling you, Reading West, it was a very difficult thing for me to hear that my brothers and sisters in church that I had worshipped alongside with were giving up their faith in Jesus. But that evening, Debbie and I, we prayed together, and we prayed that no matter what difficulties and no matter what challenges may come our way, no matter how hard life may become, that we would be faithful and true to Jesus under any and every circumstance and situation that life may throw at us. I'm telling you, Reading West, when you have a friend in Jesus, and when you have a husband or wife, as I had Debbie as my wife, that you can share and hold on to in difficult times, it's worth its weight in gold. Well, Reading West, I can tell you that things didn't get any easier after that point in time. In actual fact, things got a whole lot worse very, very quickly. But I praise God that even though the walls of society were closing in around us, I praise God that it wasn't so long until Jesus actually came. One morning, Debbie and I woke up, and when we looked out of the window, we could see this very strange thing happening in the sky. The clouds seemed to be rolling back, and behind those clouds, as they roll back, we could see the brightness of Jesus's second coming. And I don't know, for whatever reason, Debbie said to me, Dave, I want to go to see my mum. I thought, that's a bit strange. Her mum has been dead for about 10 years now. He said, Dave, I want to go to the graveyard to see my mum. So we got dressed, we jumped into the car, and we raced through the streets to the graveyard. And even when we jumped out of the car, Reading West, we could feel the ground almost shivering and shaking under our feet. And then as we were running through the graveyard to get to the place where Debbie's mum was buried, we heard the sound of a trumpet blowing. I'm telling you, Reading West, my goodness me, it was so loud, it was almost deafening. As I, excuse my humor, it was loud enough to wake the dead. And as I was running towards the place where Debbie's mum was where her grave was, I could see other graves. The ground seemed to be just throwing itself up into the air, and out of the graves, people were coming up, not alive, not dead like zombies, but young and strong people coming up out of the grave. People, I didn't know who they were, but they were just coming up out of the grave. And then we arrived at Debbie's mum's grave. And I'm telling you, Reading West, as soon as Debbie and I arrived at the grave, we could see that it was like a pot boiling. The earth was just throwing itself up into the air, and Debbie's mum rose up out of the tomb. Now, let me tell you something, Reading West. When Debbie's mum died, she was well into her 60s when she died. And she was gray and she was frail, and sadly, she died from cancer. So she was very, very frail, very, very frail indeed when she died. But when she came up out of the grave, I was so surprised. Even Debbie was surprised. She didn't come out in the same way that she went in. She came out, and in all fairness, she looked as if she was just 21 years old when she came out of the grave. And then she just came out, and she started to rise up into the air, and where we could see Jesus in the sky, that's the place that she was drifting towards. And I started to feel funny myself. I could feel my fingertips starting to tingle, and I looked at Debbie, and Debbie was looking at me. And then in a moment, just as quickly as that, in a wink, quicker than you can wink your eye, I looked at Debbie, and as much as she was already in her 30s by that time, she too changed. And she too looked as though she was just 21. And before I could say to Debbie, Debbie, you look so young, Debbie said to me that I look so young. And I looked at my hands and my fingers, and I could see that I had changed. And then together, Debbie and I, we started to rise up into the air. And while we were in the air, Debbie went, oh, and she could just rise, and she caught up with her mum, and together we all met up together in the air, right there by Jesus's side. Reading West, I'm telling you, throughout all eternity, I will never forget the day that Jesus came. I will never forget the day that all of God's faithful people, the ones who stayed and remained faithful to Jesus to their last breath, that every one of them rose up out of the grave, rose up into the air to meet Jesus. Well, Reading West, I'd like to say that I can tell you how long Debbie and I have been in heaven now, but to be fair, I can't. You know, we don't count time here in heaven. Time really has really no meaning at all. But we've been here at least 200 or 300, 400 years now, and I can tell you that I can tell you that heaven is heaven. It is just beyond your imagination. The sky is blue, the air is clean, the grass is green, and every single person you meet in heaven is just the kindest and most loving and lovable person that you could ever wish to meet. And then Jesus calls us into the throne room of God, and there on the throne of heaven is the Father, and we stand on the sea of glass that surrounds the throne of God, and we sing the song of Moses and the Lamb. We sing a song that speaks about our relationship and our experience with Jesus, who took us through this world of difficulty, this world of trial and temptation, and brought us safely to heaven's shore. Reading West, I smile when I say it, but I don't know any better way of saying it. Heaven is just heavenly. Well, Reading West, I'm coming now to the end of my testimony to you, and looking back and reflecting upon my life experience and my married life and my relationship with Jesus. I'd like to just say two things to you, Reading West, just two things. The first thing is that difficulties and trials will always come in life. And the closer we get to the second coming of Jesus, the more difficult and the more trials we will face along the way. The devil wants to pull us down. The devil wants to separate us from Jesus. And so he will put as many tripping stones as he can in the way to separate us from the love of God. But nothing can separate us from the love of God. Nothing. As long as we hold on to the hand of Jesus by faith, he will carry us through. The second thing that I want to say, Reading West, is this. We are asked to be faithful to God. Be faithful to God in our prayer life. Be faithful to God in our worship. Be faithful to God in our witness. Be faithful to God in our relationships with one another. Reading West, every Seventh-day Adventist has been called for a purpose. And that purpose is to share an end-time message of hope to a dying world. Reading West, it's my prayer that you will not neglect prayer. Don't neglect worship. Don't neglect witness. And don't neglect your relationship with each other. We have a powerful message to share. Our message, worship the God who created heaven and earth Come out of this world of confusion. Don't be deceived by the devil. This may be the message that saves some poor soul's life, brings them out of this world of chaos, and brings them into the joy of heaven that is waiting for us all. Reading West, it is my prayer, it is my hope, it is my challenge to each of you this day, this Sabbath day, that you remain faithful to Jesus in everything and in every aspect of your Christian life, in your prayer life, in your worship life, in your witness, and in your relationships with everyone who is around you, Christian or not Christian. Reading West, I ask a special blessing upon you on this Sabbath day. I wish you God's blessing. Amen. Reading West.